Maya had been dreaming about this day since she was a little girl, playing dress-up in her mother's old clothes. Now, at 27 years old, she was finally going to marry the man she thought was her perfect match. Her fiancé, David, was everything she had hoped for in a partner. He was charming, successful, and had a way of making her laugh even on her worst days. The wedding planning had taken over her life for the past year and a half. Maya had spent countless weekends visiting venues, tasting cakes, and trying on dozens of dresses before finding the one that made her feel like a princess. She had notebooks filled with color schemes, guest lists, and timeline schedules. Her kitchen table had become a command center covered with fabric samples, flower catalogs, and vendor contracts. David seemed just as excited about their big day. He would come home from work and listen to her talk about centerpiece options and menu choices. He even helped her address the 200 wedding invitations they had sent out 3 months ago. When she worried about small details, he would kiss her forehead and tell her that everything would be perfect, because they were perfect together. The night before the wedding, Maya barely slept. She kept thinking about how tomorrow would change everything. She would wake up as Maya Rodriguez, but go to bed as Maya Thompson. The thought made her both excited and nervous. Her mother, Rosa, had stayed over to help with final preparations, and they had talked late into the night about marriage, love, and the future. When her alarm went off at 6 in the morning, Maya felt like she was floating. This was it, her wedding day had finally arrived. The sun was shining through her bedroom window, and everything felt magical. She could hear her bridesmaids arriving downstairs, their voices filled with excitement and laughter. Her childhood bedroom had been transformed into a bridal suite for the morning. Her wedding dress hung carefully on the closet door, looking even more beautiful than she remembered. The ivory silk fabric caught the morning light perfectly, and the delicate beading sparkled like tiny stars. Her grandmother's pearl necklace lay waiting on the dresser, next to the bouquet of white roses and baby's breath that had been delivered at sunrise. Maya's best friend, Lisa, had arrived early with coffee and pastries for everyone. She was also Maya's maid of honor and had been helping with wedding preparations for months. Lisa was the organized one in their friendship, always making sure Maya didn't forget important details or appointments. She had created a detailed timeline for the wedding day and was determined to make sure everything went smoothly. The other bridesmaids, Anna and Kelly, arrived shortly after with their hair and makeup supplies. They had all decided to get ready together at Maya's family home, the same house where she had grown up. It felt right to start this new chapter of her life in the place where so many of her childhood dreams had begun. Maya's mother, Rosa, was a bundle of nervous energy. She had been cooking for days, preparing food for the family gathering that would happen after the ceremony. Even though the reception was fully catered, Rosa couldn't help herself. She believed that food made with love tasted better than anything else, and she wanted her daughter's wedding day to be filled with that kind of love. As Maya sat in front of her bedroom mirror, having her hair styled into an elegant updo, she thought about how lucky she was. She had a loving family, wonderful friends, and was about to marry the man of her dreams. David had surprised her with a romantic proposal 6 months ago. During a weekend trip to the mountains, he had planned everything perfectly, even arranging for a photographer to capture the moment when she said yes. The hairstylist carefully pinned each curl into place, creating a style that was both classic and modern. Maya had practiced this look several times to make sure it would photograph well and stay perfect throughout the long day ahead. She watched in the mirror as her reflection transformed from everyday Maya into bridal Maya. Her makeup artist arrived next, carrying a large case filled with brushes, powders, and lipsticks. Maya had chosen a natural look that would enhance her features without being too dramatic. She wanted to look like herself, just the most beautiful version possible. As the makeup artist worked, Maya closed her eyes and tried to imagine David's face when he first saw her walking down the aisle. The photographer had been quietly capturing these getting ready moments, understanding that these behind-the-scenes memories were just as important as the ceremony photos. Maya had hired him based on his portfolio of candid, emotional wedding photography. She wanted pictures that would tell the story of their love, not just posed portraits that looked perfect but felt empty. By 10 in the morning, Maya was almost ready. Her dress fit perfectly. Her hair and makeup were flawless, and her grandmother's pearls added the perfect touch of family tradition. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in her childhood bedroom, hardly recognizing the elegant bride. Looking back at her, her father, Carlos, knocked softly on the bedroom door. When he saw his daughter in her wedding dress, his eyes filled with tears. Carlos was a man of few words, but his emotions were always clear on his face. He had worked extra shifts at the factory for months to help pay for Maya's dream wedding, and seeing her so happy made every sacrifice worth it. The limousine was scheduled to arrive at 11:30 to take Maya and her bridesmaids to the ceremony venue. Riverside Gardens was a beautiful location about 20 minutes away, with a gazebo overlooking the water where Maya and David would exchange vows. They had fallen in love with the place the moment they saw it, imagining their guests seated on white chairs under the shade of old oak trees. But as 11 o'clock approached, Maya began to feel a strange nervousness that had nothing to do with normal wedding day jitters. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, though she couldn't put her finger on what it might be. She tried calling David to hear his voice and calm her nerves, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Lisa noticed Maya's worried expression and asked if everything was okay. Maya forced a smile and said she was just nervous, which was perfectly normal for any bride on her wedding day. But deep down, she felt a growing sense of unease that she couldn't explain or ignore. The limousine arrived exactly on time, its white exterior gleaming in the afternoon sun. Maya gathered her dress carefully as she stepped into the vehicle, her bridesmaids following behind with excited chatter and last-minute touch-ups to their makeup. The drive to Riverside Gardens should have been filled with laughter and anticipation, but Maya couldn't shake the worried feeling that had been growing in her chest all morning. She tried calling David again during the ride, but his phone still went straight to voicemail. Lisa noticed her friend's concerned expression and squeezed her hand reassuringly. "He's probably just busy getting ready with the guys," she said with a warm smile. "You know how men are with their phones on important days." Maya nodded and tried to believe her best friend's words, but something felt different today. David always answered her calls, especially when he knew she might be nervous or need reassurance. They had talked every single day for the past 3 years, sharing everything from major life decisions to silly jokes about their coworkers. When they arrived at Riverside Gardens, Maya was amazed all over again by how beautiful the venue looked. The wedding coordinator, Mrs. Patterson, had transformed the space into something from a fairy tale. White chairs were arranged in perfect rows facing the gazebo, which was decorated with flowing white fabric and the exact flowers Maya had dreamed about. The afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees, creating patterns of light and shadow that looked like nature's own decoration. Guests were already starting to arrive, dressed in their finest clothes and carrying wrapped gifts. Maya watched from the bridal suite window as her relatives, college friends, and David's family members found their seats. Her heart swelled with happiness seeing all these important people gathered to celebrate her special day. But where was David? Maya's father, Carlos, had been trying to reach David's best man, Tony, for the past hour. Tony was supposed to be helping David get ready at his apartment across town, but no one had heard from either of them since early that morning. Carlos tried to stay calm for his daughter's sake, but Maya could see the worried lines forming around his eyes. At 2 o'clock, 30 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to begin, Mrs. Patterson approached the bridal suite with a concerned expression. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said gently, "but we haven't seen the groom or any of the groomsmen yet. Do you know if they're running late?" Maya felt her heart skip a beat. David was many things, but he was never late for important events. He had arrived 45 minutes early for their first date 3 years ago because he didn't want to keep her waiting. He showed up early for job interviews, family dinners, and even movie nights with friends. Lisa immediately took charge of the situation. which was exactly why Maya had chosen her as maid of honor. She started making phone calls to everyone who might know where David could be. She called his brother, his co-workers, and even his college roommate who lived in another state. Each call ended with the same result: no one had heard from David. Since yesterday evening, the guests were getting restless. Maya could hear the murmur of conversations growing louder as people wondered why the ceremony hadn't started yet. Some guests were checking their watches and looking around for any sign of the wedding party. Others were whispering among themselves, trying to figure out what could be causing the delay. Maya's mother, Rosa, paced the small bridal suite like a worried cat. She kept smoothing down her dress and checking her reflection in the mirror, nervous. Habits that showed up whenever she was stressed. Rosa had been looking forward to this day almost as much as Maya had. She had already started planning the grandchildren's birthday parties in her mind. By 2:30, Carlos made the decision to drive to David's apartment himself. He borrowed Tony's father's car and made the 20-minute drive across town, hoping to find a simple explanation for the delay. Maybe David was sick, or there had been an accident, or his car had broken down. There had to be a reasonable explanation for why her fiancé wasn't answering his phone. On their wedding day, Maya sat in the vintage chair in the corner of the bridal suite. Her beautiful dress spread around her like a cloud of silk and dreams. She stared at her phone, willing it to ring with David's voice on the other end, ready to apologize for whatever mix-up had caused this delay. She imagined him laughing about a crazy morning filled with minor disasters. That would make a funny story at their anniversary dinners, but the phone remained silent. Lisa kept trying to distract Maya with small talk about how beautiful the flowers looked and how perfect the weather was for an outdoor ceremony. Anna and Kelly took turns peeking out the window to give updates on the guests, many of whom were now openly checking their phones and talking in concerned voices. At 3 o'clock, Carlos returned from David's apartment with news that changed everything. The landlord had let him into David's place when no one answered repeated knocking. The apartment was mostly empty. David's clothes were gone from the closet. His bathroom supplies were missing, and his car was nowhere to be found in the parking lot. Maya listened to her father's report in stunned silence. The words seemed to bounce off her like raindrops on glass, not quite sinking in. How could David be gone? They had talked about their honeymoon plans just 2 days ago. He had been excited about their trip to Hawaii, showing her pictures of the resort and talking about learning to surf together. Then Tony's phone buzzed with a text message that would shatter Maya's world completely. David had sent a message that was short, cold, and devastating. "I can't go through with this. I'm not ready for marriage. Tell Maya I'm sorry, but I had to leave. I hope she can forgive me someday." Maya read the message 3 times before the words finally made sense. David hadn't been in an accident. He wasn't sick or dealing with an emergency. He had simply decided, on their wedding day, that he didn't want to marry her after all. Instead of talking to her about his doubts or concerns, he had chosen to run away, leaving her to face 100 guests and explain why there would be no wedding. The beautiful bridal suite suddenly felt like a prison. Maya's perfect dress felt heavy and ridiculous. Her carefully applied makeup began to run as tears started flowing down her cheeks. All the months of planning, all the excited conversations about their future together, all the dreams she had built around their life as husband and wife, everything had been destroyed by a single text message. Outside, the guests were beginning to understand that something was seriously wrong. Some started to quietly gather their things and leave, while others stayed to offer support to Maya's family. The beautiful ceremony space that had looked so magical an hour ago now felt like a monument to broken promises and shattered dreams. Among the confused and uncomfortable guests still remaining at Riverside Gardens was a man named Alex Rivera. He worked as a paramedic at the city hospital and had come to the wedding as Lisa's guest. Alex had been looking forward to this weekend, off from his demanding job, hoping to enjoy good food, dancing, and maybe meet some new people. Instead, he found himself watching one of the most heartbreaking situations he had ever seen outside of his work. Alex had experience dealing with people during their worst moments. In his job, he saw accidents, medical emergencies, and family crises almost every day. He had learned how to stay calm under pressure and how to help people when they felt like their world was falling apart. But this situation was different. This wasn't a medical emergency he could fix with equipment and training. This was pure emotional devastation. While other guests whispered among themselves or awkwardly tried to figure out whether they should leave or stay, Alex watched Maya's family struggle with what to do next. He could see Carlos pacing near the gazebo, probably trying to decide how to tell to 100 people that there would be no wedding today. Rosa was crying quietly, while she helped other family members start packing up the gifts and flowers. Most of the guests were already leaving, offering quick apologies and promises to call later. Some left their gifts on the present table and hurried away, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. Others stopped to hug Maya's parents and whisper words of support before quietly making their exit. The beautiful ceremony space was slowly emptying out, leaving behind only the immediate family and a few close friends. Alex noticed that Maya hadn't come out of the bridal suite. Since the news broke about David's disappearance, he could only imagine how she must be feeling right now. All those months of planning, all that excitement and anticipation, all those dreams about her future, everything had been destroyed in a single moment. She was probably wondering what she had done wrong, or if there were signs she should have noticed. Instead of leaving like most of the other guests, Alex found himself walking over to Carlos. He had never met Maya's father before today, but he could see that the older man was struggling with how to handle this impossible situation. Carlos looked like he wanted to protect his daughter from any more pain, but he didn't know how to fix something that felt completely broken. "Excuse me, sir," Alex said quietly, approaching Carlos with the same gentle manner he used when talking to family members at the hospital. "I know this might sound strange coming from someone you don't really know, but I've been thinking about your daughter's situation." Carlos looked up at Alex with tired, worried eyes. He had been dealing with phone calls from relatives, questions from remaining guests, and his own anger at David for putting his family through this humiliation. "I appreciate your concern," Carlos said, "but I'm not sure what anyone can do to fix this mess." Alex nodded, understanding the father's frustration. "You're right that we can't fix what David did," he said carefully, "but I've been watching your family, and I can see how much love and effort went into planning this celebration. Your daughter spent months organizing this day, not just for herself, but because she wanted to share her happiness with all the people who care about her." Carlos listened as Alex continued. "What if we thought about this differently? I know it sounds crazy, but your daughter is surrounded by people who genuinely love and support her. She's got this beautiful venue, amazing food that I'm sure your wife prepared with love, and friends and family who drove from far away to be here for her. What if instead of letting David's actions ruin everything, we turn this into a different kind of celebration?" The idea seemed impossible at first. How could they celebrate anything when Maya's heart was completely broken? But as Alex explained his thinking, Carlos began to understand what the young paramedic was suggesting. Maya deserved to be surrounded by love today, especially after being abandoned by someone who was supposed to love her most. Alex wasn't suggesting they pretend everything was fine or ignore what had happened. Instead, he was proposing they focus on what was real and true. Maya was loved by many people. She was strong enough to survive this betrayal, and she deserved to be celebrated for who she was, not pitied for what someone else had done to her. "I work with people during crisis situations every day," Alex explained to Carlos, "and I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is help someone take back control of their story. Right now, David's actions are defining this day, but your daughter gets to choose what happens next." Rosa had been listening to their conversation from nearby, and she walked over to join them. Despite her tears, there was something fierce and protective in her eyes when she looked at Alex. "You really think we could turn this day into something positive for Maya?" she asked out. Alex nodded. "I think your daughter is incredibly strong for getting through these past few hours. With as much grace as she has shown, I think she deserves to be surrounded by people who actually showed up for her today. And I think David doesn't get to ruin the party that you all worked so hard to create. The three of them stood there for a moment, considering this unusual idea. It would certainly be unconventional, and some people might think it was strange. But the more they thought about it, the more it made sense. Maya had been looking forward to celebrating with her loved ones. Just because David had run away didn't mean she should lose that opportunity entirely. Alex offered to help coordinate the transition from wedding reception to what they decided to call a celebration of Maya's strength and new beginning. He had experience managing emergency situations, which meant he was good at thinking quickly and organizing people during chaotic times. He also had a calm, reassuring presence that seemed to help everyone around him feel more settled. Lisa, who had been taking care of Maya in the bridal suite, was initially skeptical about the idea. It seemed too weird, too forced, too much like trying to put a happy face on a terrible situation. But when Alex explained that the goal wasn't to pretend Maya wasn't hurt, but rather to make sure she knew how many people truly cared about her, Lisa began to see the wisdom in it. The remaining guests, about 60 people who had stayed either because they were close family or because they genuinely wanted to support Maya, were surprisingly supportive of the idea when Carlos explained it to them. Maya's grandmother, a feisty 80-year-old woman who had lived through her own share of heartbreak and disappointment, was the first to say she thought it was a wonderful plan. That girl has been through enough today, she declared firmly. She doesn't need to hide away feeling ashamed about something that isn't her fault. Let's show her what real love looks like. Getting Maya to agree to this unusual plan wasn't easy. When Lisa first brought up Alex's suggestion, Maya was sitting on the small couch in the bridal suite, still wearing her wedding dress, but looking nothing like the excited bride she had. Then just hours earlier, her makeup was smudged from crying, and she kept staring at her phone as if willing David to call and explain that this was all some terrible mistake. I can't face all those people, Maya said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. They came here to see a wedding, not to watch me fall apart. I just want to go home and pretend this day never happened. Lisa sat down beside her best friend and took her hands gently. Maya, I know this is the last thing you want to think about right now, but Alex has a point. You spent 18 months planning this celebration. You chose every detail, from the flowers to the music to the menu. David doesn't get to take all of that away from you. Maya shook her head, fresh tears starting to flow. But it's all ruined now. Every time I look at those decorations or hear that music, I'll just remember how he abandoned me. I'll remember standing here in this dress, waiting for a man who was already gone. Anna and Kelly, who had been quietly packing up makeup supplies, stopped what they were doing to listen. They had been Maya's friends since college, and they knew how much this wedding had meant to her. They also knew that Maya had a tendency to hide when she was hurt, and they worried that if she went home now, she might stay hidden for a very long time. What if we think about it differently? Kelly suggested carefully. What if instead of this being the day David left you, we make it the day you discovered how many people really love you? Look around, Maya. Your parents are here. Your grandmother drove for hours to be here. Your cousins took time off work. We're all here because we love you, not because we wanted to see you get married. Maya looked up at her friends with confusion. The idea seemed impossible to her broken heart. How could she celebrate anything when she felt like her whole world had collapsed? How could she smile and act happy when the person she had trusted most had betrayed her in the most public way possible? But as her friends and family continued to gently encourage her, Maya began to see their point. She thought about her grandmother, who had been so excited about this day that she had bought a new dress and gotten her hair done at the salon. She thought about her cousin Miguel, who had driven 12 hours from another state with his family just to be here. She thought about all the people who had rearranged their schedules, bought gifts, and traveled far distances because they wanted to celebrate with her. Alex, meanwhile, was working with Mrs. Patterson to transform the reception space. The wedding coordinator was initially hesitant about the unusual request, but she had been in the event planning business long enough to know that Sometimes you had to be flexible when life threw unexpected challenges at your clients. They removed the Mr. and Mrs. Thompson banner that had been hanging behind the head table and replaced it with a simple arrangement of Maya's favorite flowers. The DJ, a middle-aged man named Pete who had been doing weddings for 20 years, was surprisingly enthusiastic about the change of plans. He had seen runaway grooms before, and he admired the family's decision to turn a devastating situation into something positive. "I've got the perfect playlist for a celebration of new beginnings," Pete told Alex with a smile. "Music that's uplifting and fun, but not specifically romantic. We want people to feel good, but we don't want to make Maya uncomfortable." The photographer, who had been hired to capture Maya's perfect wedding day, made the decision to stay and document this unconventional celebration instead. He had been moved by the family's resilience and Alex's kindness, and he wanted to make sure Maya had beautiful photos of the day her life took an unexpected, but possibly better turn. When Maya finally agreed to change out of her wedding dress and join the celebration, she chose a simple but elegant blue dress that she had packed for the honeymoon. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. This wasn't the glowing bride she had expected to see today, but it wasn't the broken, abandoned woman she had felt like an hour ago either. Walking into the reception hall was one of the hardest things Maya had ever done. She expected to see pity in people's eyes, or worse, awkward discomfort as they tried to figure out what to say to someone who had been publicly humiliated. Instead, she was greeted with something she hadn't expected: genuine warmth and support. Her grandmother was the first to approach her, wrapping Maya in a fierce hug that smelled like lavender and determination. "That boy didn't deserve you anyway," she whispered in Maya's ear. "Now you get to find out what it feels like to be celebrated for exactly who you are." The afternoon that followed was unlike anything Maya could have imagined. Without the pressure of wedding traditions and formalities, the gathering became something more relaxed and genuine. People shared stories about Maya, talked about memories they had made together, and offered words of encouragement for whatever came next in her life. Alex found himself naturally taking on a hosting role, making sure Maya never felt alone in the crowd and that everyone felt included in this unusual celebration. He danced with Maya's elderly aunt when her husband got tired, helped serve cake to the children who were getting restless, and made sure the photographer captured all the genuine moments of laughter and connection. When Maya's cousin stood up to make an impromptu toast, she didn't talk about marriage or romance. Instead, she talked about Maya's strength, her kindness, and her ability to bring people together. "Maya, you've always been the person who remembers everyone's birthday, who shows up when people need help, and who makes every gathering more fun just by being there. Today we get to show up for you the same way you've always shown up for us." As the afternoon continued, Maya found herself actually enjoying moments of the celebration. She laughed at her uncle's terrible jokes, listened to her college friends share embarrassing stories about their dorm room days, and felt genuinely touched by how many people had chosen to stay and support her through this difficult day. Alex watched from across the room as Maya gradually relaxed and began to smile again. He hadn't expected to spend his weekend off helping a stranger through a crisis, but he found himself genuinely glad that he had been there to help. There was something special about Maya's resilience and the way her family had rallied around her that reminded him why he had chosen a career focused on helping people. In the weeks following that unconventional celebration, Maya found herself thinking about Alex more than she expected. Not in a romantic way. Her heart was still too bruised from David's betrayal for anything like that, but she couldn't stop thinking about the kindness he had shown to a complete stranger. In a world where most people would have quietly left an awkward situation, he had stayed and helped turn her worst day into something bearable. Alex had given Maya his phone number before leaving that day, not because he was interested in dating her, but because he genuinely wanted to make sure she was okay. As a paramedic, he knew that the real healing often happened long after the initial crisis was over. He had seen too many people struggle alone with trauma because they felt like They should bounce back faster than they actually could. Maya's first text to Alex came 3 days after the wedding that wasn't. She simply wrote, "Thank you again for everything you did. I'm still processing what happened, but I wanted you to know that your kindness meant everything to my family and me." Alex responded with equal simplicity, "You don't need to thank me. I hope you're taking care of yourself. Healing takes time." These brief, thoughtful exchanges continued over the following weeks. Alex would check in on Maya occasionally, never pushing for more conversation than she seemed comfortable with. He would ask how she was doing, share a funny story from work, or send her a photo of something that reminded him of their conversation. About finding strength in difficult times, Maya found herself looking forward to Alex's messages. Unlike her other friends and family members, who meant well but often seemed to want her to move on or get back out there, Alex never made her feel like she was healing too slowly or processing her emotions wrong. He understood that betrayal left invisible wounds that took time to heal. After about a month, Maya suggested they meet for coffee. She told herself it was just to properly thank him for his help. But deep down she knew she was curious about this man who had shown such wisdom and kindness during her darkest moment. They met at a small cafe near Maya's apartment, and what was supposed to be a quick coffee turned into a 3-hour conversation. Alex was nothing like David. Where David had been charming and smooth-talking, Alex was quietly thoughtful. Where David had always seemed to have the perfect answer for everything, Alex was comfortable admitting when he didn't know something. Where David had made big romantic gestures that looked impressive but often felt hollow, Alex paid attention to small details that actually mattered during their conversation. Maya learned that Alex had become a paramedic because he wanted to help people during their worst moments. He had grown up in a family where his father struggled with depression, and he had seen firsthand how much difference it could make when someone showed up with genuine care and practical support during a crisis. "I've always believed that how people treat you when you're at your lowest tells you everything you need to know about their character," Alex told Maya as they shared a piece of chocolate cake. "David showed you who he really was that day, but so did everyone who stayed to support you." Maya found herself opening up to Alex in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her fears that she had somehow caused David to leave, about her embarrassment over the failed wedding, and about her worry that she might never be able to trust anyone again. Alex listened without trying to fix her feelings or convince her to feel differently. "Trust isn't something you can force," he said gently. "It's something that gets built slowly, through consistent actions over time. David broke your trust in one terrible moment, but that doesn't mean everyone will." As spring turned into summer, Maya and Alex's friendship deepened. They would meet for dinner once a week, text each other regularly, and sometimes Alex would invite Maya to low-key social events with his co-workers or friends from his neighborhood. He never pressured her to be anything other than exactly who she was in that moment of her healing journey. Maya began to notice things about Alex that touched her heart. He always showed up exactly when he said he would, if they planned to meet. At 7 o'clock, he would be there at 6:55. He remembered details from their previous conversations and would ask follow-up questions weeks later. When Maya mentioned she was nervous about a job interview, Alex sent her a text the morning of the interview wishing her luck, and then followed up that evening to ask how it went. More importantly, Alex never tried to rush Maya's emotional recovery or push the relationship in a romantic direction. He seemed content to be her friend for as long as she needed that, without making her feel guilty for not being ready for more. It was Maya who first realized that her feelings for Alex had shifted from gratitude to something deeper. The moment came during a quiet evening in late August when they were cooking dinner together in her apartment. Alex was telling her a story about a difficult call he had responded to that day, and Maya found herself watching his face as he spoke. She realized that she trusted this man completely, that she felt safer and more herself with him than she had with anyone in a long time. "Alex," she said suddenly, interrupting his story, "I think I'm falling in love with you." Alex stopped stirring the pasta sauce and looked at her with surprise. They had never talked about the possibility of romance, both understanding that Maya needed time to heal from David's betrayal before she could even consider opening her heart to someone new. "Are you sure?" he asked gently. "I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything because of what happened that day, and I don't want you to confuse gratitude with love." Maya shook her head, smiling for the first time in the conversation. "I've been thinking about this for weeks. What I feel for you isn't gratitude, Alex. It's love. Real love, built on trust and friendship and respect. You've shown me what it feels like to be cared for by someone who actually shows up." Alex set down the wooden spoon and turned to face Maya completely. "I love you too," he said simply. "I have for months, but I wanted you to heal and be ready before we talked about it. I never wanted you to feel pressured or like I had some ulterior motive for helping you." Their first kiss happened right there in Maya's kitchen, with the pasta boiling over on the stove and the smoke alarm starting to beep. They laughed as they ran to turn off the burner and open windows. And Maya realized that this was what real love felt like: comfortable, genuine, and full of the kind of laughter that comes from sharing life's everyday moments with someone who truly cares about you. 8 months later, Maya and Alex were married in a small ceremony at the same venue where her first wedding was supposed to have happened. This time, only 50 people attended, but every single person there genuinely loved and supported the couple. Maya wore a simple yellow dress instead of a white gown, and Alex wore the same navy suit he had worn to her first almost wedding, a reminder of how their love story had really begun. The man who had said "I'll help" to a stranger in crisis had become the man who said "I do" to loving her for the rest of their lives.